There has been a lot of noise, particularly online this week, because the Home Office in the UK decided to deny entry to the UK to two really popular left-wing content creators, right, Matt?
Yeah, so Cenk Uygur, who is the co-founder of the Young Turks podcast, and his nephew, Hasan Piker, who is arguably one of the most famous men in the world and one of the most influential people on the left, particularly amongst young people. And the UK government has denied them entry to this country, hugely controversial. They denied it on the grounds that they were not conducive to the public good.
Dear Hasan Piker, your UK ETA has been cancelled. This means you cannot travel to the UK without a visa. This is because your presence in the UK is not considered to be conducive to the public good. You cannot appeal this decision. Apply for a visa. If you still want to travel to the UK, you need to apply for a visa so we can consider your circumstances in more detail. Having your ETA canceled does not mean you will be refused a visa.
Now, we should get into why they did this, what the effects are going to be, but just on that conducive good thing, there's been a few cases of them denying people entry due to them not being conducive to the public good. Lots of the speakers at Tommy Robinson's last Unite the Kingdom rally were denied entry. People at that rally saw that as a huge infringement on free speech. It further entrenched them into their positions, the ones that I spoke to. Now that is coming for people on the left too. Now people on the left are starting to criticize the UK government's approach to free speech with the same vocalness as the right. So, but other people who've been banned, Smotrich, the Israeli finance minister, he was banned from the UK. So, the UK government could be making that point. Tyler, the Creator, was banned by Theresa May because of his lyrics, because she didn't understand that it was a character he was playing in his songs. Martha Stewart was banned from entering the UK, although that's due to her criminal record. And most famously, recently, Kanye West was denied entry.
Wireless Festival. And accusations of antisemitism, particularly posts he's shared online. And a lot of the stuff we're going to be talking about is comments that people have made on social media, whether it's in a post or a video or what have you, that have then been seemingly used as evidence to say, right, you hold these views which are not in the kind of public good and could be too controversial, so you can't come.
Exactly. I mean, look, Kanye West did lots of very anti-Semitic things. He, made shirts with swastikas on them. He made a song called Heil Hitler. The crazy thing about him being denied entry to the UK was he had just, taken out a page in the Wall Street Journal to apologize. He put it down to his mental health struggles. He had met with some rabbis. The board of British Jews invited him for a meeting. He was kind of on the beginning of the long road to redemption. And then the Wireless Festival organizers were like, nope, he's ready now. Like, he's going to headline Wireless, which was a crazy move.
Well, and
right?
so many, and there was so much controversy around that. I mean, obviously there were lots of people who were like, I get to see Kanye, I get to see Ye. And then there were also people who were like, oh my God, how can there's no way he's going to be allowed to come in.
I think no one expected the Home Office would deny him entry. People were like, Wireless surely has to cancel this. I mean, surely the advertisers did pull out. Pulled out. And it was like, why did you think that he was ready for his moment of redemption now? But when the Home Office stepped in and said, we're denying him entry, people began to say, okay, this is an overreach. Of course, he's said some terrible things, but does the Home Office get to decide when someone's apology for offensive comments they've made is now accepted? Or is that an overreach? At the time, people were making the point that this is a slippery slope. If you're going to start banning people, then where does that end, right?
Yeah, A, it's a slippery slope, but B, also, how are you going to be consistent in this approach? What reaches the threshold of this is too extreme and you're not allowed to enter? Because we're talking here about sort of allegations of antisemitism, but then also you've got people who are extreme on the right, who are accused of spreading neo-Nazi ideas and other things, some of who've been not allowed in. But then we've seen YouTubers who were allowed to, for example, take Nick Shirley, who was allowed to be at that Unite the Kingdom rally, who again is seen as a pretty controversial figure.
The things that, for example, Ye has said are so much worse than the things that Hasan Piker has said. And
that brings us to this news story, which is now that Hasan Piker and his uncle have been denied entry, everyone is understandably kind of relitigating this debate about how do we decide who is not allowed and on what basis. And if we, like you're just saying, if you compare the allegations that have sparked controversy and condemnation in some cases from Hasan Piker, those feel much less extreme than the ones we're talking about in relation to Ye.
Or what, Smotrich has said, potentially arguing that the starvation of millions of Gazans is somehow morally justified. Or Valentina Gomez, who was banned from the Unite the Kingdom march, she, has filmed herself shooting a mock migrant and called for executions of migrants who commit certain crimes. So, these people are very extreme. You're lumping Hasan Piker in with them. We should get into why they've done this. But first, should we give a little bit of a bio to people who don't know who he is?
Yeah. Well, Hasan Piker is so massive, right? Like, would it be fair to say that he's almost like the left-wing equivalent of Charlie Kirk, say, who was killed last year? Like, their influence in what we would kind of consider the alternative media space on totally different sides of the political spectrum, in fact, in like complete opposites in their views and so on. But like, in terms of their prominence, particularly for younger people, like massive.
So Hasan Piker started as a streamer. And what that means is he streamed 10 hours, and still does sometimes, 10 hours a day of him playing games. And you can watch him play games and talk while he's playing the games. So he's mainly playing Fortnite, right? Which is one of the most popular games for young people. And it may seem really weird to like anyone over the age of 25 why someone can become like arguably the leading political commentator on the left for talking about politics whilst playing video games. I guess that actually seems quite weird to me too. But that is like, that's the world we live in, right? He's a democratic socialist. He's a supporter of national health care, which in America, some people see as an extreme position. He is a vocal critic of Israel. He's also very funny, very good looking, very fashionable, and like, he just has an appeal to young people because of all those reasons.
This is sincerely Democrats openly saying, hey, guess what? We are insincere. We are not serious. We are not invested in making the necessary changes in this country. We are going to advance unbelievable idiotic distractions.
Now, around the time that Trump won this election, there was a kind of mass panic amongst the Democrats and centrist people, where they came up with this notion that like we lost the election in part because we don't have a left-wing Joe Rogan, right? And
yeah, actually, probably Rogan is the person who's been compared to more so than Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
Joe Rogan is a super popular podcaster, which I'm sure top commenters
yeah, I mean, Joe Rogan is the most popular podcaster in the world, amongst men and also amongst women. Most people don't know he's the most popular podcaster amongst women too. So around the time that this soul search for a left-wing Joe Rogan was happening, there were a lot of think pieces that were trying to put Hasan Piker in that role, right? Now, I think that's a little bit unfair because Joe Rogan is popular because he is very willing to entertain conspiracy theories.
Well, yeah, also it's more that Rogan's approach, right, is more that he interviews people and kind of asks them questions, and the criticism of him would be that he's not like challenging or combative in his argument, whereas Hasan Piker feels like he's got very specific views himself that he holds and that he advocates for.
Yeah, and I think the other aspect of this kind of discussion is the idea that he somehow represents a new kind of masculinity, right? And there's so many think pieces that, the New York Times did an article that named him as a kind of progressive person in like a manosphere body. And their argument seems to be like...
Because he's really into like sort of all of the same things to some extent that manosphere influencers focus on, I guess. Kind of, I mean, lifestyle-y type stuff.
He goes to the gym and he watches basketball and he has progressive views.
Which is actually quite a lot of people.
Yeah, I think the idea that like anyone who has progressive politics is some kind of like effete person living in a basement and has never played sports is ridiculous, right? So the idea that like because he goes to the gym and has progressive politics, he's going to save the Democratic Party is a little bit funny because to young people he's just like a normal person, right?
Well, then that's why he's so popular because he is really relatable and quite normal in the same way that lots of the people we talk about on the right are. They seem more like someone you could encounter and hang out with rather than like a kind of career politician who feels a bit icky and like what's going on here. This is like the opposite of cringe posting. Exactly.
And the other thing you see a lot of like centrist think pieces focusing on is that he somehow is an antidote to the manosphere because he like is muscular, but he also like wears, pearls. But like, again, that just means he's fashionable. Have you ever been to Brooklyn, right? Like if you went to Brooklyn during the summer where guys started wearing pearls, it would be more shocking if you found me a man that like wasn't wearing a pearl necklace. The whole Hasan Piker being denied entry story, I think demonstrates the extent to which Israel-Palestine has become now the defining moral issue of our generation, right?
And it's worth saying that both Hasan Piker and Cenk Uygur say that they believe they have been denied entry on the basis of their criticisms of Israel. These are some of the comments which Hasan Piker has made in the past, which have triggered a reaction or sparked controversy. And it's worth us just mentioning them to explain on what basis they believe they were denied entry. The Home Office have not said what specific comment or reason they've been denied entry. So Hasan Piker has described Israel as 1,000 times worse than Hamas.
So my question is, when you say Hamas is 1,000 times better, do you actually mean that? Or is that a rhetorical move or like a solidarity signal? Like what?
I mean, it's all of the above. I do mean it. I think it's a rhetorical move because it frustrates a lot of people. I've also said I'm a harm reduction voter. I'm a lesser evil voter, and therefore I would vote for Hamas over Israel every single time.
He said America deserved 9/11 due to interventionism, but since apologized about that. He praised the Chinese Communist Party, and he said that many Americans understand the killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. He's the person that Luigi Mangione is alleged to have killed. So those are the kinds of comments that have sparked reaction and controversy, even though, as you point out, Matt, in the online world, these kinds of comments don't feel perhaps as controversial as they do to people who don't inhabit the social media sphere.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you only have to look at the timing of this to question whether this comes out of a desire within Labour to assuage certain people who believe that Labour hasn't done enough on anti-Semitism, and particularly a certain type of anti-Semitism that is associated with the left and associated with criticism of Israel in their eyes. And Hasan Piker has repeatedly said that he's terrified of the conflation of anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism, of criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism.
Anti-Semitism is a canary in the coal mine of fascism. It's one of the oldest bigotries that has caused those of the Jewish faith a tremendous amount of pain. From pogroms to the Holocaust, Jews have always been singled out by those in power as a scapegoat for instability and economic volatility people in power cause. This is precisely the reason why I am terrified of the conflation of anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. The conflation is dangerous.
If this was really about just anti-Semitism, then why was Tucker Carlson let into this country by the Home Office? Someone who said far more anti-Semitic things.
Very extreme.
Far more anti-Semitic things, but not from a left-wing perspective.
He would argue that they're not anti-Semitic. And it's worth saying as well that Hasan Piker consistently says, I am not anti-Semitic, I am anti-Zionist or anti-Israel.
Exactly. And I think the issue that the current government has with this is that they may be trying to appease some people, but they are alienating a lot of especially young people. And this is what I mean when I say that the Israel-Palestine issue has now become the kind of the defining moral issue for a generation, is that, they are seeing tens of thousands of people dying in Gaza constantly on social media. This is, something that a UN commission has called a genocide. Amnesty International, Médecins Sans Frontières have also said that Israel denies that it's a genocide, but the reality that they're seeing in their social media seems to contradict that. And they believe that their government, whether they're talking about in the US or in the UK, is not doing enough about this. And they believe that mainstream media isn't covering it in the right way. And then someone comes along who does, and that person gets denied entry to the country.
Don't you think that lots of this is the product of the massive gap that now exists between what you would consider the kind of political circles, the professional media, traditional media, however you want to frame it, and then what's happening in the social media world? It feels like there's a massive gulf, which is some of these comments, the ones we've just listed, are the kinds of things that would be run on the front page of a paper, and a paper would say this is a really, really controversial view. They would say that it's anti-Semitic or it's not okay or whatever. Whereas in the social media world, and certainly the kind of realm where often these comments have been made, they are just very sort of commonly held or expressed opinions online. And it just feels like when you think about the political decisions being made, that a lot of that is focused on, which I mean kind of makes sense, but is focused on the pressure and criticism that will come from, say, the media or other political figures, and not from what the reaction will be from the average social media user, which is a younger person who'd think, hang on a second, I see people say this kind of thing all the time and I really don't think it's that controversial.
Yeah.
And then there's this really important point, which is a lot of the people we're talking about here are people who will, be following Hasan Piker on his streams or his social media content or whatever, where he is reaching millions of people.
Yeah.
And so The decision to kind of deny entry on the basis of, say, like concern around public good or whatever, you're not actually limiting his reach in any way.
He doesn't need to come to the UK to speak to his millions of followers.
And he'll probably do lots of these events remotely, right?
Exactly. I just want to read out the statement from the president of the Oxford Union, who we're going to have him. They've said the Oxford Union intended to host Cenk Uygur and Hasan Piker on 6th of June for discussion and head-to-head event with our members. We are deeply concerned by the revocation of both speakers' electronic travel authorizations on the basis that their appearances would not be, quote, conducive to public good. These events have been publicly announced for months. This 11th hour call signals a much more than democratic decline. It is a direct threat to free expression. The Oxford Union was founded on one principle, that ideas are challenged through debate, not silenced by decree. We have never turned a speaker away because of their political beliefs, nor have we sought a permission slip from the state. We will not start now. This event will not be cancelled. The union will ensure this discussion takes place. Free speech does not require a visa. We will update our members shortly. So, I mean, that is a damning statement.
It went so viral
from the
as
Oxford
well.
Union.
Like loads of people were resharing it, people on the right, as well as people on the left, about the approach that the UK government takes to sort of social media comments and posts, and whether the government are too draconian in terms of how they deal with people posting things that could be hateful or harmful but aren't necessarily illegal. Flip side of that is there's also a lot of pressure on the government to tackle like harmful stuff online, and the suggestion that like the kind of misinformation we were talking about right at the beginning, like the false identification of a police officer, like that will exist and circulate, and there's quite a lot of pressure to say, hang on a second, like why is that not being taken down or removed?
Yeah, and I think, you know, like obviously the Labour Party has been trying to demonstrate that it is clamping down on anti-Semitism ever since they suspended Jeremy Corbyn from the party due to not doing enough on anti-Semitism. This comes in the wake of, you know, the horrific attack in Golders Green.
And genuine concerns around
genuine
anti-Semitism online and in the real world.
Of course. But you only have to look at the fact that he was denied entry and Tucker Carlson wasn't to question that this could be them targeting a very specific kind of left-wing criticism of Israel or perhaps anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, and in doing so have alienated a lot of people.
For me, this is very much about how politicians still just really struggle to grapple with the social media world and to understand it. And I think that's one of the main things that I've seen popping up, and the main criticism I've seen popping up is the questions around consistency. And it's like, okay, if you're going to do this, then do it, but you have to do it in a way that feels consistent across the political spectrum, on all sides, all views, and so on. And because there's not transparency, right? Like, we don't know why the Home Office we know the broad reason, but we don't know the specific reason why they've denied entry. We can make guesses, and lots of people are making guesses, as including the people involved. But because there's not transparency, it's like we don't know their work. Like, we can't see their workings, right? And everyone in the social media age is so used to being able to see, like, how did you come to that decision? Like, how did you decide this person was banned and this person wasn't banned and whatever? And like, probably the answer to that is that there like isn't a consistent, coherent policy, and a lot of it is about what is going to trigger the least bad reaction, which is a lot of how politics operates.
The UK government is increasingly being criticised on both sides now for clamping down on free speech. Remember how upset people were when the US began investigating people who wanted to visit that country and get visas, investing their social
and having to
media
give your social
presence.
media handles.
Exactly. This government's willingness to deny people entry based on their political views and the comments that they've made. And the right has been saying this for a long time. Now the left are going to start saying it as well.
Yeah.
So
you think of like when the rioting happened following the killings in Southport, and there were lots of examples of where misinformation appeared to inflame the real world tensions, contribute to violence, and so on and so forth. There were also people who were arrested and charged for their posts for stirring up racial hatred and what have you, and they then became also kind of like poster people for the freedom of expression movement. And lots of people on the right said, well, hang on, why is this person, this feels really disproportionate, why is this person, received this sentence or been charged with this when this person hasn't? And I think it's just that like consistency issue that appears to be the problem, because no one's quite worked out how to hold people accountable for what they say online or not.
And this comes back to the discussion of Kanye West. The second you start banning people, the question becomes, where do you draw the line? And that is something that's very unclear to everyone right now. And why you wouldn't let South by Southwest, who are going to have Hasan Piker take the heat, why you wouldn't let Wireless Festival, who for some reason decided to have Kanye West headline, take the heat. Why has this become a government question? This also comes at a time, and some have argued the UK government's decision has been insulated in a way by this, when the US government is investigating and has subpoenaed Hasan Piker for traveling to Cuba. Interestingly, Nick Shirley, who hasn't been subpoenaed, who was allowed into this country, also traveled to Cuba and stayed in the hotel that the U.S. government are accusing Hasan Piker of having stayed in. So we're increasingly seeing on both sides of the Atlantic governments investigating people who those governments appear not to politically agree with. And then the criticism of this being a free speech issue understandably arises.